Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online video with me, Sherman. Today we're going to be taking a look at the adventure build that I made a while back. I remade it here for Summerset. It's actually a really fun build. It's made to be a fun build, not something that you play like in dungeons or trials or anything like that. This is just for questing, overland use, you know, doing that kind of stuff. And it can work in public dungeons, overland, normal dungeons. As a tank, you can pretty much tank anything with it. Even if you do some minor adjustments, you want some more health in it, that kind of thing, you can do that. But the way it's set up right now, as you can see, like I have it where I tested a parse with this, and I was doing like 12k DPS. It really wasn't something I was shooting for. It was just something I did. I just did it to test the build itself and how it worked. So, and it really didn't work out to the advantages I wanted. I just did it. So, but yeah. So we'll get into all the build here in a second, but first I want to go over a little bit of why I've been away. Real life issues, real life responsibilities have taken a little bit more precedence over the game right now. So I've kind of taken a step back and said, okay, I need to get my priorities right. I need to fix something, you know, get my real life situated before I start doing this again. And there's other stuff going on that I don't want to talk about. It's, like I said, it's personal. So, but let's get right into it. So as you can see, the build has 10k magicka, 20k health, 34k stamina. This is a wood elf warden, and in order for this build to work properly, I had to set it up this way. As you can see, we have a 1500 stamina recovery. We really need that stamina recovery for this build to make it work really good. We do have a 2800 weapon damage with a 37% crit, 17k spell, and 16k physical. That is on the front bar. When we swap bars, we do lose some resistances, but that's okay. Moving down here, we are using the Warrior Mundus Stone. We do have the Guardian Bear, and we are using Dubious Cameron Throne food. We are using a pot for this build, and we're using the power pots. This gives you stamina, major endurance, major brutality, major savagery. That increases weapon damage and your critical, mainly for to beef it up. The Dubious Cameron Throne is there to give you increased stamina recovery, but it also gives you max health and max stamina. Going over the gear sets that we're using on this build, we are using a 2-piece blood spawn, heavy helm, light shoulders, Nirnhone on the shoulders, infused on the helm. We are going for a resistance type build here, so we want to get as much survivability as possible for solo play. Moving on to the next set. The next set we're using is the Viper set. Now this drops in Fungal Grotto 1 or 2. And it's pretty easy to get if you play on Fungal Grotto 1 and you play it on normal. You're only getting the 5-piece body for this. So it's an easy set to get a hold of. And as you can see, it gives you two things, a weapon critical on the 2 and 4-piece. On the 3-piece, it gives you max stam. And on the 5-piece, when you deal damage with a melee attack, you deal an additional 7,420 poison damage over 4 seconds. And it says this effect can occur every 4 seconds. So every 4 seconds, you're going to be pretty much reapplying poison non-stop. Moving on, we are using another 5-piece set. And on this, by the way, we are using a reinforced chest with an infused leg. Nirnhone on all the small pieces. Now, the reason why we're using Nirnhone is to beef up our resistances, like I said, for survivability purposes. So the other set we're running is a 5-piece werewolf hide, and as you can see, we have 2 pieces that are robust. I think all 3 are robust. Yep. So we're using 3 robust, 3 weapon damage on these to boost up our weapon damage output. But werewolf hide, if you look what it says, it gives us max health, stamina, weapon damage, and then when you take damage, you generate 5 ultimate, and this effect can occur every 5 seconds. So this build is made to generate ultimate so you can fire your bear off as much as possible. If you're not taking any damage, it's kind of a useless set. But if you're taking damage, it works out really well. So moving on to the sword and shield, we are using a Nirnhone sword with a Crusher enchant. This applies pretty much, stays up pretty much 85% of the time, I would say. And then we have a Nirnhone shield with stamina in it. And as you can see on all of our sets here, pieces, we are using mostly stamina. Except on the chest, we are using a health enchant. Everything else is stamina. That's how we get that 34k max stamina, and that 20k health is by the way we have this set up. Moving on to the bow, we are using an infused bow with weapon damage. And again, this boosts our weapon and spell damage. We get to roughly, I think it's about 4k. Almost 4k weapon damage. For some reason, it's reading it a lot lower. I think that's the back bar stuff. So, but on the main bar, we are getting 3940, and that's not all the time. That's a lot of the time. And then on top of that, our crit is 52%. So, and our critical damage is 80%. But this is not showing the correct because it's not showing the correct down here either. For some reason, I don't know. Like, there we go. Probably because I didn't have that clicked. So as you can see down here, we get we have a decent amount of output here. Our heavy attacks are doing 6k roughly. Our bite from our bear is doing 4k. Our endless hail does about 1291. And then our subterranean assault's hitting for about 12. Razor caltrops hitting for about 1.6k. Viper stings hitting quite a bit. But if you go down and you see the Guardian Savagery is hitting for 26 is its maximum, or its minimum average, but its maximum, it hit for 51,000. So this thing can almost one-shot enemies if you have enough penetration on them. So it's a really good skill to use on this setup. So the reason why we use this setup the way we do with the sword and shield and the bow, the sword and shield allows us to get the maximum penetration on enemies while we're fighting them in the open world. So it really helps us just defeat them fast. Now you can use dual wield with this or two-handed. It's up to you. I prefer sword and board with this build because it works out for greater survivability because you can block attacks and you can do other things. Alright, so now that we're done with the gear, let's go ahead and jump into skills. In a build like this, you want to make sure you unlock all your passives for your class, and you probably will unlock more skills than what I have available here because you will get more skill points. This one I've spent 175 skill points on, but you can spend a lot more. There's a lot more that you can earn in the game in total. Or that's what I have left, I don't remember. Moving on to the weapon, the sword and shield, make sure you get all the passives. Bow, all the passives. Armor. The light armor, you just need the top 3. Medium armor, you want them all because this is a medium armor build. And heavy armor, you just need the top 3. You don't need all of them. I just made a mistake when I was putting skill points in. You can be a vampire or werewolf with this build. It's up to you. Soul magic, you can go with these 2 there. And then on these, the Fighter's Guild, make sure you fill in all of it. If you want to use like Evil Hunter and Flawless Dawnbreaker instead of Resolving Vigor and this, because you really don't need a heal all, you know, like you can swap this out with Vigor, and then because you don't use this a whole lot except if you block an attack. So, and yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. Mage's Guild, you just need this Persuasive Will. Psijic Order, you don't really need any of these, but if you want to use one, you can. Undaunted, you want to make sure you get the Undaunted passives. Yes, you do want to have those for this build. Assault, Vigor, and Caltrops. Nothing there. Make sure you get all your racial passives. And you can use pretty much any race you want with this build. Argonian, Khajiit, Wood Elf, High Elf, Dark Elf. It doesn't matter. It's up to you how you want to play it. Make sure you get the alchemy or medicinal use out of the alchemy, and then on provisioning, gourmand and connoisseur. You don't really need these two because you are using a 2-hour food, so they're not necessary. So going over the skills on the bar, starting with the main skill we use, Pierce Armor. This applies Major Breach and Major Fracture, so it kind of helps you just deal damage. You can use Ransack with this, but I would not suggest it. This works out better. And as you can see, it does a decent amount of damage. On Deep Slash, this applies Minor Maim, which reduces the incoming damage of the enemy by 15%. But it also does decent damage to a single target and 2 other targets if you're fighting a group. So, next up we have Subterranean Assault. As you can see, this thing can hit for 12,501 physical damage. And it also applies Major Fracture. That's why I said you can use dual wield and two-handed with this if you want. This just allows you to apply that Major Fracture to multiple targets. Next up we have Reverberating Bash. This does a decent amount of damage. It applies Major Defile. You don't really need it unless you're playing in PvP. And if you're playing this build in PvP, it's very survivable. And it's very beefy. So it works out really well in there. But I would suggest like using this only in PvP mostly, but I mean you can use it in PvE because you do fight a lot of healer type characters, so reducing the heal is kind of nice. Resolving Vigor, really good heal as you can see, and then of course we have our Guardian Bear, which does just an enormous amount of damage. And then we will swap to the back bar. On the back bar we have Cutting Edge. This is a stamina morph or dive morph, and it's just basically you throw out a bird that does a ton of damage. Next up we have Endless Hail. This does damage over time. It helps out with the Vipers and everything. And the twin slash, or the, you know, or sorry, with Vipers and not having twin slashes. So you get a lot of more dots. Same thing with Razor Caltrops. Just a lot of these things are here to just increase your damage output. The next ability here is a floating ability. Like I said, you can swap this out if you wanted to with like the Fighter's Guild ability, and you could just put it here and move Ice Fortress over. That's up to you. It does do a decent amount of healing, so if you're playing with somebody else, you've got some heals you can apply to them. It's really nice. Next up we got Ice Fortress. This gives you Major Resolve and Major Ward. This increases physical and spell resistance. It also grants you Minor Protection, which increases your damage reduction. So it's a really nice trade-off there. And then of course, last but not least, Guardian Savagery again. You want that bear on both bars, because that's how it has to be. And that is the skills. We're going to move on to the champion points. Starting with the red tree, we have 66 in the Ironclad. This reduces damage taken from direct damage attacks by 22%. We have 1 in a medium armor focus, 1 in a spell shield. This just gives us a little bit more resistances, and I didn't really have any place to put the last 2 points. Moving on, we have 66 in a Hardy. This reduces damage taken from poison and disease damage by 13%. And then Elemental Expert, or Defender, sorry, reducing Flame Frost, Shock, and Magic damage by 13%. We do have 31 into Thick Skin. This reduces damage taken from damage over time effects by 13%. The nice thing is we also get Bulwark, which increases our resistances when we have a Sword and Shield equipped. So, moving on over here, we have 19 into Quick Recovery, increasing our healing received. This just helps us out with surviving, because anytime we heal ourselves, we get a little bit better heal. Moving on, we have 56 in the Warlord. This reduces break free cost by 20%. 25 in the Sprinter, reducing our sprint cost by 15%. We are using medium armor, so kind of helps. 43 in the Mooncalf. This increases stamina recovery by 10%. We are Wood Elf, so that's a 30%, and then you add the other, 31%. So 21% from Wood Elf, 10% from this, 20%. You have like a 51% recovery. It's really ridiculous. And then Tenacity 76 for stamina return on our fully charged heavy attacks. You do a lot of heavy attacks with this build. So moving on, we have 23 into Shadow Ward. This reduces our block cost by 10%. We do have a Sword and Shield, so getting that extra block cost can really help because it saves us. Tumbling 26. This allows us to reduce our dodge roll cost by 11%, and then with the 20% from our light armor, we get actually a 31% reduced cost in dodge rolling, saves us some stamina. And then 1 in Befoul, just to beef up that major defile from Reverberating Bash. Moving on over here, we do have 43 in a Bless. This increases our healing done, because we do have those heals on our bars, so it can help us out. Moving on over here, we have 25 in a Physical Weapon Expert. This increases our light attack damage, light and heavy attack damage by 15%. Moving on to Mastered Arms, we have 56, which increases our damage done with direct damage attacks by 20%. Over here, we have 56 in the Mighty. This increases physical poison disease damage by 20% or 12%. Precise strikes increases your critical damage done with healing and critical damage by 20% by putting 56 points in there, and then 14 into piercing, increasing our physical penetration by 1374. Now you guys are probably going to wonder why I don't have anything in the thaumaturge. The damage over time we get from caltrops and the endless hail is enough to help us out, so it's kind of a nice trade-off there. That's why we didn't put anything in thaumaturge. If you wanted to put in the thaumaturge, you could, but I would suggest still leaving 40 points here, taking everything out of these two, and just dumping it all into that. Try to get this up to 56 points so you get that extra damage. But that's it for that on the skills, the gear, glyphs, traits, you name it, all that stuff. For the build, and like I said, this is mainly made for overland solo play. This isn't made to go run dungeons and solo them and all that kind of stuff, like normal dungeons or veteran dungeons. You could probably run a few normal dungeons with this build solo if you are skilled enough, and maybe a few veteran dungeons, but I would really suggest putting a little bit more into the health. Like, take the 14 points I put into I would lower the stamina pool to put more into health, just so I get that extra benefit. Or I'd put some tri-stats in the build, whatever. Something to benefit the build a little bit with health, stamina, maybe a little bit more magicka. But that is it for the build, guys. I hope you guys like it. If you do, you guys can hit that like button. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Oh, wait, I forgot something, didn't I? You can subscribe also. So, that's up to you as well. But other than that, thanks for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy might see you in game. Bye.